Mhm.
Cutwork Studio is an architectural and design practice based in Paris and Amsterdam that works with pioneering companies to reimagine the way we live and work. With believing that architecture is what happens in the space between people living in it, the studio has successfully delivered innovative spaces and products across multiple locations. Today, we are so happy to be joined by Antonine Yuji Maeno and Kelsey Crawford, the co-founders of Cutwork Studio, and we will be chatting about futures in shared architecture. So thank you so much for being here.
Hello.
Thank you so much. We are very happy to be here.
We're happy too. So will you first tell us about your background and about the firm?
I'm an architect. I studied in the School of Paris in Belleville, and I also spent a year and a half in India with Balkrishna Doshi. And we founded Cutwork in 2016 around the idea that the ways we live and work have changed, and that we need that the world has changed massively in the last 20 years, and that we need a new way to think about spaces and furniture in order to adapt to the realities of this new world.
And me, my name is Kelsey. I'm one of the other co-founders. And as maybe you'll see throughout the interview, Anto and I are kind of some duo team here. So we're two halves of one whole. So together we have made Cutwork what it is today. We're very different, extremely different in all ways, which I think makes the magic somehow. Not always easy, but makes it really work. Where Anto is an architect and also an engineer. You forgot to say that as well. I'll remind him of his merits. He also invented a furniture technology using laser tube cutting right after architecture school. So I think that makes us a little abnormal also in terms of a studio with both one foot in architecture and one foot in engineering and industrial design. But from my side, I didn't study any of those things. I am neither architect nor engineer, and I consider myself an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I'm American, half British, but I grew up in the US and come from a family of people who built their thing from the ground up in all different domains, but a lot in building and real estate. So I came by it kind of naturally. I started my first company when I was 20 and then moved to Europe when I was 24, thinking I was just going to spend a year. Then I met this guy at a bike station one auspicious day, and my whole life path changed. And well, that can be the object of a longer story, but started out as a big romance between us that then led into a very prosperous business collaboration. We realized we were exactly the other one's opposite, which allowed us to do a lot of things. I was focusing on development and sales and strategy. We both do strategy, but and then he was really in the creative powerhouse. So after 4 years, we separated romantically, but kept the studio together. And now we really consider each other chosen family, you might say. And we really support each other, and there's a lot of love there. And Cutwork is, yeah, our big life project together.
That's very impressive. I'm very curious what inspired your design approach.
So I'm half French, half Japanese. So I guess somewhere that plays something. But what inspires us, I think, is really that need for an alternative way to look at the built environment. Like today, we need to look differently on what we have, on how we are occupying the territory, on how we are designing our spaces, on the relationships that happen between the people. Because this is what we think, is that beyond stacking floors on top of each other, beyond taking care of the beams, the pillars, the fancy, beautiful facade, making sure that this is not about just making a big box. What we believe is that the real matter of architecture is what happens between the people. This is the reality, more than bricks, more than wood, more than steel. This is about people and what happens between them. And so we start from there, I think. We believe we should build the city kind of from the inside out. We believe we should build the city from what happens between the people and then grow from there, rather than having this huge view and then forget about the people inside?
Yeah, I would say we're very multicultural as a studio, which inspires our work a lot. We're US, Spanish, French, Japanese,
Polish,
and have been many more over the years, many more collaborators.
Italian,
Italian, exactly.
Mexico. Yeah.
So we don't really have we have a very open view of architecture throughout the world. And also, I think we're very inspired by just how society is changing, and we live it and we experience it firsthand. So we're kind of have an ability to see and project that maybe people of other generations don't really have, or can't really imagine. But one thing that we're really inspired by is the radical change in the traditional family structure, and how today in big cities all over the world, in particular, the traditional family, which is two parents, two kids, makes up less than 15% of all households in some examples, such as Munich. We see divorce rates, which are 50% across Europe. In Luxembourg, predicted to be 89%, in Portugal, 91% of all new marriages. So we're seeing that things are radically shifting, yet housing typologies are often continually being designed for this kind of blip on the radar of traditional family of the 1960s, 70s, and Western culture. And this is just what's considered to be repeated and is the golden standard. And I think what we like to explore and what we think is important is housing for people who don't fit that standard or don't fit that norm or want to live differently or need more flexibility in the way that their living space is designed, or just want an alternative, as Alto said. Maybe they don't want the traditional big house, but they like a smaller house, and then they have access to travel, or they have access to sharing houses, or they have access to size up or size down once the family evolves or once the living situation evolves. Also very interested in multicultural, multi-generational families, and how housing can be designed differently for that. So I think that's really the core interest from our side. I also really personally love the exploration around relationship structures and how they're evolving, and how if a home,
we are the living example of that.
If a home helps support relationships, and if relationships are changing, then what is the home that's evolving to change as relationships change?
How can your home help you not be stuck into one relationship dynamic, but in contrary, help you transform within the relationship, within the relationships? Maybe just to name it, there is a very interesting sociologist called David Brooks, who talks about the sociodemography of the family, about the history of the family. And I think that's what Kelsey was referring to when she mentioned a blip in the radar for the traditional family. And that's his thesis. His thesis is that the traditional family as we know it, the mononuclear family, which is the idealized picture of what is a family when we think about this word, it only existed between the 1950 and the 1965, like in its ideal realistic form. After that, divorce rates are enormous. Like the separation between families is, we cannot consider that this is the standard model in these days. And what he says is that we've lived most of our history as extended family, like as something that is more with aunts, cousin, this kind of stuff that is more resilient to the changes that occurs within the family. And that today we are seeing the rise of something called the chosen family. That's what he names them. And that's very interesting.
That's super cool. I mean, you just explain how, shared architecture can transform people's lifestyles and behavior, but also the other way around, right? How people's lifestyle and behaviors and the demographics these days raise the need for shared architecture. I guess it's like a chicken and egg problem, but I think that's also the beauty of adapting with each other, right? Adapting with the changes. It's a continuous process that's really pretty to see. So how do you achieve a balance between inclusivity and diversity while addressing, the need for privacy and fostering the sense of community in shared architecture?
Yep. There is one key sentence that we have at the studio when we think about shared architecture, and it's that, on the contrary to what might be what you think first when you think of collective spaces, of shared spaces, where there's a lot of people doing a lot of social things together, it's only possible to live together if there is always the possibility to be alone. So that's one of the key elements, is that in order to be able to have a successful community, you need to have an understanding that we mostly spend a lot of time, even in community, as private elements, private units. And so the design of that relationship between the privacy, the introvert, the focusing, rather to the very extrovert, the very social, the very movement, hectic elements, is the key to design a successful community. So when we think about our shared architecture, this is the game. Well, and also I would say this derives also from a place that is, we don't want to reproduce the corridors of the 20th century, because if you think of a city designed in the 20th century, this is mostly kind of buildings with rooms and apartments, and in the middle corridors. And these corridors are just dead spaces where nobody talks to each other, and you're like next to your neighbor, and you've never talked to any of them. And the promise of shared architecture is that you can meet people, that you can have interaction, that you can have a richer types of encounters, you can have unexpected moments. And that's what we try to design.
Very nice. Do you want to share an example of one of your projects?
So this is a project we did for one of the big real estate player called the Bouygues Immobilier. And what they have asked us is to try to explore what is the future of shared urban living. And what you're looking at here is one module unit. It's like a show flat of the single unit of that co-living place. So, and what we've done is we've been inspired by a Japanese concept that is called washitsu. And in fact, a washitsu is the traditional room in Japan. And the traditional room in Japan is not predefined in its function. Like, it's not a bedroom, it's not a dining room, it's not a playroom, it's just a room. And then you pull out the tatami and it becomes the bedroom, and you pull out a table and it becomes a dining room, and you pull out games and it's a playroom. So our question was, what is a washitsu Western? What's a Western washitsu? And what we came up with is that idea of a polyroom. So polyroom is about each element of the room, each element of the function, each element of the design is reconfigurable. So for example, the bed, you can pull it up, hide it, or pull it down and use it. And basically that allows to have a lot of things to happen that wouldn't be happening in 21 meters square. And so what is a room where you enter and you expect to first see a bed, but suddenly you don't have a bed? A lot of possibilities exist. You can meet people, you can hang out, you can have dinners, you can have a lot of things happening. Samely with the kitchen, with the kitchenette, we thought, what about hiding the kitchenette so that you don't have to have it always next to your pillow?
One of the big kind of concept ideas within this design is that if we're being forced to reduce square meters, because this is the nature, this is the reality in many urban areas, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, London, how can we do more in less space? And how, if this is the inevitable future of most for many people, how can we design spaces that are really tooled and refined for the best experience possible? And how can we stack usages so that the space can fully transform for different usages? So for example, if we have 5 different things we can do in the space, we can sleep, we can work, we can exercise, we can host, we can cook. If the space, the 20 square meters, can fully transform for each of these usages, we can live as if we had 100 square meters.
So for example, when you pull up the bed and don't see the bed, but pull out the kitchenette, you have a 21 meter square kitchenette. But then when you hide the kitchenette and you hide the bed and open the wardrobe like this, you have a 21 meter square dressing room.
And for us, this is also sort of being a magician of design in a way, because when you walk into a space and you see a bed, your imagination is immediately fixed. I'm in a bedroom. This is what I do here.
Yeah.
But when you can make things cleverly disappear, or when you can hide things away, your mind is much more open about what the space can become. And this creates a lot of freedom.
Somehow in this game, at its best form, architecture is a balcony for the mind. Like architecture is an opening. When we first put a roof somewhere in long time ago, not only we protected ourselves from wind and from the rain, but also we had the opportunity to suddenly do something we didn't do, which is gather, talk, discuss. And that's this ability to open possibilities that we like to explore with reconfiguration of small spaces. So how can the reconfigurability of the small space be and act as a balcony for the mind? This is a door that changes our relationship to the corridor and to the shared spaces. And so this is a very traditional farm door that is used in the countryside. But as you can see, if you use it in an urban environment, this says 3 levels of intimacy, right? Completely closed, completely open, and something in between where you're ready to interact. And so how can we reinvent that is kind of our subject. This project is prefabricated, which means it has been built in a factory and then brought on site like this. And so I'm a bird watcher. I watch birds since I'm 6, which is like that. And one of the key challenge for me somehow is how can we transform the city as a live place for the biodiversity. So how can we make sure the city is designed like a forest that is really welcoming to other types of living, to the biodiversity. And here the idea is to combine the very industrialized version, because there is a huge demand for housing. So how can we address the lack of housing, but then how can we integrate key elements of planting and of greenery in order to welcome biodiversity? So for example, in this very industrial project, what we did is we integrated a birdhouse that is specifically designed for these types of species that are endangered in cities, and with the vegetation that fits it, that is welcoming to them. And so as you can see, the idea is then from there, you can just stack them like Lego blocks and deliver them on site from a factory, and then plant it and have it grow and be activator for biodiversity. And then this allows to have different formats, like 5,000 meters square, 2,000 meters square, 800, or even small kind of rural compounds, or even, you know, a reader cabin or some retreat place like this.
Okay, so the second project that I feel really embodies the studio and what we're working on right now is a project called Experience House. And so we're deep in the concept phase of the work, so we don't have renders or things to show yet, but I can use this slide just to give you a kind of an overview of what it is. So Experience House is maybe what we could call like a hybrid blend between living and hospitality. So it's a pop-up ephemeral co-living project that's happened so far in Guatemala and in Morocco. And the idea is that it's a curated group of 20 to 40 people who are invited to live together for a period of 2 weeks to a month. And the idea is that, you know, the operating company, Experience House, basically handles all the logistics. So home, meals, cleaning, etc. But then all of the programming that happens in the space is co-created by the people who are inside. So if there's a circus performer in the house, maybe they're going to plan a circus performance for the weekend. If there is a pop-up dinner party planner, maybe there's going to be a surprise dinner party for everyone. And it's really about bringing people together who have many things to share and who are driven to explore that collectively. So it's a very beautiful project because it's very unexpected and very untraditional. And so the question for us has been, how do we design a home that is a toolkit for experienced designers? So how can the home transform into a concert venue, into a cooking school, into a dance performance? It's fascinating to imagine how to design a house that has the capacity to hold all of these different usages and still feel like a home.
Because this is not a kind of a eco-lodge resort. This is not like a boutique hotel. This is not a corporate seminar. This is not a big holiday home. So what is it? You know, this is a very specific pop-up chosen family moment, and kind of very intense moment. So what is that place? What is the typology of the space? What is the typology of the what type of house is that?
And knowing also that everyone who is there is probably working remotely on their job back home during the day. And then in the evenings and on the weekends, everybody comes together to play or to hang out. So this is also where really unusual but very cool collaborations happen. Just a way to, this last point, expanding horizons, personal and professional. It's, for me, one of the most interesting projects I've ever been a part of, to understand how to meet new people, how to cross-pollinate different disciplines, and then you end with people who may be lifelong friends or future collaborators. So it's a very special project. I think it's, you know, when we think about the last 2 decades, what Club Med tried to be, which is like you go away to a vacation, you're quite contained for a week, you go with your family, you meet friends. But this maybe is the 2024 and beyond version of what could work professional travel look like. Especially for people who wear many different hats. You know, I am a developer and a musician. I am this and that. So it's very untraditional. And I think this is going to be a driving project in the future of what are new hospitality projects like, and what kind of experiences are people asking for and craving. And, you know, it also provides a very sticky design challenge for us, because places like this don't exist. And mostly we're just trying to
find the right shape, the right form for it.
Trying to find a place that we can do this within. So now the challenge of designing a home from the ground up that's fully designed for these usages. I think this embodies the studio for a few reasons, but mostly because it's really challenging the way living and working are happening, asking for new solutions, asking for a lot of creativity and play in the design process, and is checking my box as the owner of the studio of designing projects that we would like to participate in.
These type of projects align with us. Their core idea is to reinvent collective trajectories, is to reinvent alternative, is to propose alternative collective trajectories. And that's why we design. We believe as architects, our game is to just put out in the world alternative possibilities, alternative collective trajectories, and to propose that and to see which one takes or which one doesn't take. But our game is just to experiment that and to try.
And just a last little drop, actually, where we're zooming in for you from is Burgundy, France. And we're currently at a project called Chateau de Fay, which is a castle in the Burgundy region of France that functions half of the year as a co-living artist residency project, and the other half of the year at its core right now is hosting events and more traditional kind of elements to help the business model function. But the long-term vision of the site is to really become a cultural arts center and a place, an alternative living space for people from all over the world. So it's a really exciting project. Right now it's a castle with 26 bedrooms, lots of common spaces, can sleep 100 people. And they're hosting an arts festival at the beginning of May, Faytopia Arts. So it's a very unusual kind of space, but one that we believe in and we think is really changing, especially in these older renovation projects. What do we do with heritage architecture that's no longer being used to its potential today, and how do we put new usages inside? And Faytopia, Chateau de Fay, and what Jess, the owner, is doing here is really remarkable.
That's so cool.
It's a great project to look forward to and to take a look at deeper.
I think I would love just to take 2 seconds to show the cortex. Maybe just really quickly go, because I think this shows also something important about the studio. Basically, this is the process we invented to bend metallic tubes by hand. So basically, what you have is a tube. You score it with notches made out of laser. And because of these notches, thanks to these notches, you can bend it, and then you can use it in order to make furnitures and to make other type of lightweight structures, like this, for example. And out of that, we made a refugee shelter. So basically, this is, and I just want to show that in order to show you that we also have a part of the company that is dedicated to do impactful projects. And so refugee shelter was one of our first project, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And basically what we've done is we've combined our bend tube technology with someone called Cortex Composites, which is a company that has designed and patented a rollable concrete material. And so basically this concrete material is like a mat. You can think of it like a mat that is impregnated with cement, and you roll it, send it, ship it, and then unroll it on site, put water, and then you have a hard slab once it dries. And so what we've done is we've built a structure with our bendable tubes, and we've added this cloth that gets hard after being hydrated. And then you have a just add water house. And this has been one of our first projects. You can assemble it and build it in 24 hours, and it lasts 30 years. And that is important because one of the assumptions is that refugee camps are temporary, but actually they're not. You stay a long time in a refugee camp, and the issue is more, how can they not burn? How can they be more solid? How can they be more durable rather than how to dismantle them?
For sharing. I mean, I feel like all your works are very unique and your creativity is challenged in different ways, but all so exciting. So lastly, how do you foresee the future evolution and significance of shared architecture, considering potential challenges such as social and climate-related issues?
So I think that today we are hopefully at a beautiful opening point where shared architecture will become more accepted or normalized in the toolkit of architectural solutions for living alternatives or living options. I think that what's facing us in terms of climate change requires that we rethink how we live together. And I think that collective housing in different shapes and forms will be one solution that many people will turn to. I think humans are meant to live together. I think over the last century, 2 centuries, we have fallen into a place where privacy and having our own and ownership has really driven behavior. And then we end up in a place like we are today, where, according to latest study published actually a week ago in France by La Casa, who's a co-living creator, 12% of people live in complete isolation today and declare not even having a single friend. Also, like a third of people only participate in one social circle, whether it be friends, family, or workplace. And then, across the world, across France, 15 million people declare themselves to be lonely. That's driving a need for new forms of cohabitation and of sharing. Because when we are with each other, when we're able to interact in ways, we grow, we evolve, we have more empathy. And I think that this is much needed today in terms of housing options.
Yep.
But, the problem is there's just not a lot of very obvious options because, one piece that we say often in the studio is it's only possible to be together if it's also possible to be alone. And there's not really a very mainstream offer of how to live in community while also keeping your need for privacy and intimacy. And I think that's where architecture has a big role to play. Because if we design spaces where each person feels in security, in safety, and nourished in their solo individuality, and then has the option to step into community experiences, dinners with 15 people, collectively working together, I think that this is what people want. It's just the options in terms of architecture have been so poor that there's not really a way to experience that. So it's sort of ruled out as not for me, or I could never live like that. And I think that most people that I know who have experienced collective living projects, when it's designed well, it's extremely nourishing and people thrive. When it's designed poorly, kind of just like anything, the experience isn't that great. So I think that's one of our roles as an architecture and design studio, is to be able to design experiences of collective living, which are actually very desirable for the era that we're living in today.
During the pandemic and the lockdown, we designed this text. We wrote these elements that are on the screen right now, and this is we call it Together as Change, and 5 key points. 5 key points to reinvent our collective trajectory. And maybe when you think about the future of architecture, you can dig into this part of the work. We made this available in our website through the format of something we call Unfold, which is a 1-page A4 magazine that you can go check on our website. And yeah, that has been kind of our study of what is the future, you know, of urban living somehow. So that maybe that is interesting. And maybe one key element when we think about the future of shared architecture is to address very rising inequalities. And today, the city is a machine to produce inequalities. And so how can collective housing, how can cooperative model of housing and ways we think about the city could help change that dynamic and help reduce the inequalities? And one of the things that we have been doing also is explore alternative access to ownership and alternative relationship to ownership of your home in order to reduce these inequalities. So maybe that's one direction we hope would get better in the future with collective and shared architecture.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really exciting about architecture is that it revolves around people. So like it or not, human response or psychology of human beings also play a part in, you know, receiving the space. So architecture is always going to be beyond the provision of space, right? So, and thank you so much for reminding us that architecture is for solving problems in this world. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Carina.
Merci. Thank you.